Hello and welcome back to this damnful idealistic crusade. In this video, I want to talk some about bad commentary tracks. This particular one is one that has plagued me since 2004, and any Sergio Leone fan who had the unfortunate experience of engaging the Richard Schickel commentary track on the MGM 2003 extended English language version of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which first turned up on the 2004 extended special edition DVD release they did. Now, Richard Schickel was the longtime film critic for Time magazine and other publications. He wrote many film books and made the Men Who Made the Movies documentary series for television in terms of focusing and spotlighting various directors and other personnel. He interviewed many legends and became the official sort of biographer for Clint Eastwood, did many books and articles and studies, and appeared in virtually every talking head piece. But his audio commentary tracks that were done primarily in the DVD and Blu-ray era are notorious among not just physical media fans, but film fans for being not just a chore to get through, but really what often sounds like I don't know how to put this politely, like the opinions of a cranky old guy who doesn't even like or think very much of a lot of the films he's commenting on, unless they were accepted by the critical establishment as being great, and even then he would question things about certain films that are classic films, or even disparage certain elements of classic films. And to this day, on various social media platforms and forums, you'll find people posting that they decided to try a commentary track for a classic film, and they post about who is this old guy who doesn't even seem to like the movie he's commenting on, and why is he so unengaged with the material, and the track is filled with long pauses, ums and uhs, and opinionated statements. And we all go, well, you've just been introduced to the dreaded Richard Schickel commentary track, or as I like to put it, you've just been shickled. These are all a chore to listen to, but some are worse than others. His track for The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is, I think, one of the worst commentaries of all time, because when you try to listen to it as it is a 3-hour film he's commenting on, and at the start doesn't seem to have the greatest opinion of, and also doesn't seem like he did much preparation for it. This track is filled with pauses, long pauses, scenes that are not commented on, the classic ums and uhs, and other words that are not actually words telling you anything, which you could chalk up to somebody's speaking style, which is fine. Recording a commentary is a very difficult art to master, but if you're doing nothing but saying ums and uhs and having long pauses and silences for a significant portion of the track, then it becomes a problem. And this was one of the first commentaries I really actively listened to as a budding young film enthusiast, and I thought all commentaries were like this, a chore to get through. And then I actually heard a good one, and I started to realize just how bad this track was. And to make matters worse, Sir Christopher Frayling, Leone's greatest champion and his biographer, had recorded commentaries for all of the MGM-held films, and even Colossus of Rhodes for Warner Brothers. All of his commentaries are, nonstop information, extraordinarily easy to digest and understand, even if you're a newcomer to the films, or if you've never listened to a commentary before. They are a college course in Leone's filmography in each track. They are all among the greatest commentaries ever recorded, and they're so enjoyable to return to time and time again. Now, on GBU, it's said that perhaps the recordings had been done around the same time, but due to space limitations and the way MGM handled this disc release, they could only choose one commentary, and unfortunately they went with the Schickel one. So for years, we were stuck with this commentary, and we didn't get Frayling's commentary on GBU really until the 2009 initial Blu-ray release of the film, of the 2003 version in its 2004 video master. So we had to wait 6 years to actually get the superior commentary. And the Schickel commentary is on every release of the film that has the MGM extras, which, it should be to preserve it. But the more you pay attention to what's actually said in the commentary, the more you realize that you could isolate the few little tidbits of insight or information that Schickel brings, all of which are surface level at best, and some are actually credited as being taken from Frayling's research and biography and such. So he's just repeating Frayling's analysis. But these are only tidbits scattered throughout the whole 3 hours. And I've listened to this track at least 15 times over the years, and every time it becomes more and more apparent just how bad it is. Because you start to notice just how many pauses there are, how many scenes aren't commented on, how many ums and uhs there are. And this last time it suddenly dawned on me that I'd say there's probably at least 20 to 30 minutes of combined silence of things that aren't commented on. And then when you start adding in all of the extended pauses and all the ums and uhs, it's a significant portion of the 3 hours if you were to cut all of that together. The ums, the uhs, the long pauses, the couple of generalities, the few errors and mistakes that he makes, some of which are really glaring, and some of the times where he is inadvertently or quite possibly just being plain demeaning towards the film. Basically, you get to the end of the 3 hours and you get the sort of summing up or feeling of Schickel basically saying, "Oh yeah, that's a pretty great film. Yeah, it's pretty great." You had to sit through 3 hours to get to that point. And all of his commentaries are like this. Some are better than others. I do think his commentary for Once Upon a Time in America is even worse because that is roughly a 4 hour film. It is Leone's final film, his most challenging film, and that track is the worst commentary I have ever experienced. It is filled with so many gaps and so many disparaging generic remarks that really mean nothing. It is the most pointless and just plain bad commentary I think possible. It has all of the hallmarks of what make a commentary truly bad. But this one for GBU is right up there. If you read the film's Wikipedia page, you're going to get far more than you do in this 3 hours of rambling and ums and uhs. Yes, there are a few little nuggets of insight you could say are worthwhile, but that's maybe a combined total of 5 to 10 minutes at best if you cut all of them together. As I said, Schickel makes a number of small errors scattered throughout the track, but the most glaring one, and really the most surprising given a film critic of his stature who had written books and made documentaries, is that he misidentifies the film that Leone was referencing by repurposing a classic scene and turning it into the famous gag of Tuco turning the gun on the gun shop owner and robbing him instead of paying for it. He identifies this as from the James Cagney vehicle Blonde Crazy. Any classic Hollywood fan or Cagney fan would know right off the bat that that is completely wrong, as the scene is one of the most famous bits from The Public Enemy, the William Wellman directed masterpiece that catapulted Cagney to stardom and arguably still the greatest gangster film ever made. Why Schickel insists that it's Blonde Crazy that this scene was in is beyond me. He also doesn't mention that the scene was once again repurposed by James Cameron in The Terminator.
This is a scene, a vastly extended version of a scene that appeared 20 odd years earlier in a James Cagney movie called Blonde Crazy. And it's the same deal. The kind of criminal guy comes into, in the particular case of the Cagney film, a pawn shop to buy a gun, and talks the owner of the shop into letting him heft a gun, feel out the weight and seriousness of the weapon, and then cons him into, giving him a few bullets, and which he then loads into the gun and essentially holds up the pawn shop owner with the very gun that he's thinking of buying, and walks out with the gun and the bullets in it. Now, that's a very quick scene in Blonde Crazy. It probably doesn't take more than a minute or minute and a half of screen time. Uh, Typical of Leone, he takes that little notion and vastly extends it. I mean, this scene goes on a good long time, and
And if that wasn't bad enough, he reiterates it multiple times during that scene. He keeps saying the James Cagney movie Blonde Crazy as if everyone should know this. That's the most glaring error because it's just plain wrong and clearly wrong.
you know, hence this kind of borrowing from Blonde Crazy. Um, and the vast extension of the little comic conceit of that early Cagney movie.
He also refers to the film constantly as a spaghetti western, which is, of course, the term that was invented to deride the Italian westerns as being unimportant. I don't think he thinks the film is unimportant, but it is very tiresome to hear the film referred to only by its originally derogatory term. Typically, I don't say all that much when a commentary is just plain bad in terms of doing a review. Actually recording and performing an audio commentary, regardless of being a critic or not, is a ridiculously difficult task. It's something that not everyone does well or even enjoys doing. I've done a number of them myself, and it never gets any easier, especially if you're like me and you want it to be as good as possible and try to cram in as much information or analysis as you can. But the bad commentary tracks are bad for reasons, and every Richard Schickel commentary track is not worth your time. Even the ones that are solid for the most part, they're still a chore to get through. And those are typically only the ones for Clint Eastwood films because, of course, he was Eastwood's official biographer and critic of sorts. So, of course, those would get much more favorable views. And also, as I said, films that were accepted by the American critics at large as being classics. But even those, Schickel might disparage somehow or say he didn't understand why they did certain things or disparage other elements of them. So anytime you see a Richard Schickel commentary listed on the extras of a film release, just know what you're getting into. And I've been so frustrated over the years with this particular commentary track, as it was one of the first I ever listened to, that I finally said enough was enough, and I decided to actually focus on just how bad it was. So, what I've done is essentially make a compilation of Richard Schickel's various insights into the good, the bad, and the ugly. I have cut together the ums, the uhs, some of the long pauses, and a few little bits of some of the generic statements to give you a flavor of what this commentary track is like if you've never listened to it before, but also to highlight the percentage of this commentary track that is just plain unimportant and a waste of your time, because when compiled, it is a significant portion of the 3 hours, and the rest of the track is either silence or general statements that you could get by reading basically any sort of information about the film or the film's Wikipedia page, which is far more detailed. And again, I want to reiterate, the other commentary tracks for The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly are among the greatest commentary tracks ever recorded. There's the Sir Christopher Frayling one for the long MGM version of the film, and then there's the outstanding Tim Lucas commentary done for the international cut of the film, which is on the Kino Lorber releases and the definitive Arrow UHD set. So definitely listen to those if you haven't before, and if you revisit the film or go through the extras, you can always return to those as they are outstanding and always worth your time, and really only venture into the Richard Schickel commentary if you dare. Whenever I'm stuck listening to another Richard Schickel commentary or he pops up on a disc release in terms of legacy extras, I only can do one thing. I have one reaction, and it is simply this: Schickel! And as always, thank you ever so much for watching. And so now I present Richard Schickel's insights into the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Hello, I'm Richard Schickel. Uh, it was a film put out it and two predecessors for a few dollars and a few dollars more, and the film was in other words, enormously successful. The so and kind of an interesting operatic quality. And I do believe that a lot of the basic setting of this drew on something that people don't know too much about, which is that Leone was and was aping the wide shots, particularly in these two, which with so I think hasn't been particularly commented upon in and it is part of his seemed to them to the is kind of a new element. The uh, and but new by who to of and it's about three guys who are in pursuit of and so Lee Van Cleef and this is a shot that or this whole sequence here is kind of worth commenting upon when he and these settings, for example, this you know the wilds of in and his the scope of Lee Van Cleef was with he was a striking looking man, some troubles, and but he is without the and you know and this peasant and I think the Leone we know that the man unless he exceeds to it's a scene that foreshadows and it certainly foreshadows moment for a man who I think there's always a lot of talk. There's always a lot of between and it is I think the opposite, which was established where blood squibs exploding in slow motion. The of what should we say, foreplay. It tends to be and so I mean, this scene has been going on a very long time before it reaches. I mean, but in this story, also is a man that I think the moment we and as a kind of to and I mean a and the and and mise en scène, as the French would say, and in and new and here is Mr. Eastwood's introduction to the film. He has and for and the good, the bad, and the ugly from director. The setup here, of course, is that and the you know and then as we'll shortly see, working it out so that Tuccio does not die as a result of being brought in, and they collect and split the reward that Blondie receives for this bounty scam that they're running. In particular, the first one, Fistful of Dollars, and the this, by the way, is a classic moment, the moment of the puff of smoke and the appearance of the man with no name, and he's uh, was a way of establishing the Eli Wallach is he was and is a very distinguished an actor who had he was prior to this film had been in a number of Elia Kazan's Baby Doll. In he played a character not unlike this character, although even more evil in The Magnificent Seven, as this kind of a. But and in his 80s, and uh, and I don't think there's any particular and I mean everything that's sort of who's very ambiguously portrayed. This is a nice little sequence here. The obtaining of information from this legless veteran of the major killing that is going on all around the central story of the pursuit of this gold. Of the Civil War, which and it's this is a scene where and spaghetti western, fairly careless about and both that and of but and I guess it's a film. I mean, he in the end, and his again here is and you know you know but and these films, the three spaghetti westerns that Leone made with Clint, the I myself have seen only a handful of others, and they don't seem to me particularly to compare to the Leone films in their quality. Um, you know, and you know, and then you know, and which he then and you know, and you know, and this and you know, and it's one of those jokes that uh, um, the fascist regime in Italy. But he was a guy who at and having this just and his big thing though was to you know um, the and it's and into it's a significant scene and but in and it's kind of a nice scene and you know, since we have now all the time in the world to study the work of Sergio Leone, it was kind of an amusing Leone sort of a deal. You know, he knows that um, it's uh, in this picture, and and full of cockamamie ideas, and it's a town that is being, you know, of and will be going in the future. He is going to, and one of the things that's, you know, and you know, because you know, you know, and but and is something that in the course of, you know, Uh, and Now here, what is going to happen, of course, is that um, you know that in other words, Clint is going to have to and stand on him and the fact that it is the introduction of this character to the fact that and the unit that's been obviously defeated and decimated in this war. Um, the and you know and but again is it, and but the fact that and now this you know introduction of this kind of decimation of sort of ordinary humanity. I mean, in we haven't said much about Ennio Morricone's score. I mean, that's a very familiar little theme that he's used in previous spaghetti westerns. Just you know, he's I mean, available sounds using you know, but it that and uh, uh, of and the extension of and well, this is the beginning of what will be an inordinately long sequence in which the Clint character is by of Leone's being influenced by the surrealist painters. The surrealist and there are other elements. Leone was and 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 Ed, I you know uh, he was and this is a particularly um, I think it's probably appropriate to say that you know that was diminishing as and uh, uh, and Um, and it was little sequence here is a in the it's uh, it's new, it's good. Again, I don't know how much establishment we need at this juncture of. On the other hand, it's fun, especially here where and it's worth saying that, of course, and you know, uh, you know, but uh, and he had you know in and yeah, and 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 at this point in this lengthy sequence of how to put it, heated torment. Again, I think we're dealing with a Leone who is setting his own pace. I mean, it's obvious that you could make this sequence in a lot shorter amount of screen time. A bit, again, I like this leisureliness. To give the film a kind of in a movie, this kind of now the arrival of this um, uh, in the development of the film. This is again one of Sergio's really leisurely revelations of and the significance of what these guys find in this runaway ambulance. Um, what will happen here is that the two of them will get the most significant clue anyone in the movie has thus far had as to the location of this famously missing chest of gold. And uh, it, it's kind of cleverly set up in the sense that uh, and so our um, so it becomes a significant turning point in the movie. When I was uh, um, and I think I'll stand by that characterization. But and very human, no matter how the information he or the partial information that will lead on. Again, this is a kind of conventional piece of plotting in terms of popular fiction, whether it's a detective story or a western or what have you. The dying man's confession that motivates the rest of the movie. There are always references to the the bluntest, crudest conventions of popular fictioneering in the movies, but you know um, the banalities of if you it finally gives the film in my sort of critical practice, I've always loved the guys who take, you know, um, uh, you know, this is the moment, and you know, and you know, that's funny, and I think it's terrifically well played by, you know, the now the now desperate Tuco. Tuco has, of course, commandeered the ambulance and is now of this is a and you know and uh, uh, in and again, as we're sitting around watching this movie on home video, and we do have the time for this sort of thing, and this little soldier is a character who appeared in at least one other Sergio picture. I think he was but anyway, is to of the kind that dotted the. There is in all of Leone's kind of wistfulness about he uh, in graveyards, in all of the kind of panoply of as many Italians do, but he's there is, and we'll see it, and I'll remark on it later on in the film. He does often stage sequences, usually sequences of in disused churches or you know places like this mission, which are you know doing their best to succor the wounded and the of the war, and I think this movie constantly refers and I think the notion that he's exploring in this movie of war as the ultimate cataclysm that is something that he's and something that I think this is a film that is implicitly about this which I mean, all bets are off, morally speaking, in this context. I don't really think that when that uh, out of and it's just ripping and tearing is but you know fistful of dollars and a few dollars more. I mean, you know, you know, and and uh, you know, I think one of the things um, been um, so you this is something that of course comes up time and time again in gangster pictures. A gangster picture would be something in Sergio Leone's future, of course. And um, and uh, in the film, in the narrative. I like the silence that Clint maintains in this sequence, and but and of course his hypocritic rationalizations of uh, in the future action of the film. You know, sequence added back in to the film that was cut in the original American release print. Um, and that, incidentally, according to Frailing, is a little conceit that is taken over from an Ambrose Bierce story, in which same thing happens. You know, but this sequence here, which again is an extraordinarily long and fairly complicated one, and aware of, and made us aware of in various interviews, conscious of the and wanted to make a comment on the death camps, and this film is about at this point here, after a long absence from the film, is Angel Eyes, uh, which is a name I think Eli gave him. He didn't have that name in the script, but he became Angel Eyes on the set, and then Angel Eyes in the film. Um, uh, and in the previously deleted scene, which we saw a bit back, a intense. It's one of those little leaps that Leone requires us to take on faith. But, you know, face it, it's true of lots of movies that the logic of them is not exactly clockwork. It's sufficient that he is here, he's as mean as ever, and the cruelty to the who you know is, and you know, pretty much it's one of those sequences, isn't it, where you that are almost put in so that we understand that only a few bad apples in the barrel are spoiling, you know, an honorable cause. Speaking of Morricone, this musical theme here in the prison camp is truly one of his most beautiful and haunting themes. And, you know, when we've been used to the Morricone style of his subsequently in this sequence, the poison food bit, uh, is, I think, acceptable and amusing, and uh, uh, and throughout, I think, and um, here comes the Morricone theme sneaking back in, many of which and and the fact that he knows that and and you know you can't deny that this is we're talking 1966 and we're in 2003, and I don't think the and and the interesting here in that Angel Eyes is going to try and make common cause with the hero. Then because but that at least some Civil War combat, and the last time, and this is a train journey ostensibly to his death. Here is another of the restored scenes, and and Clint Eastwood, and and I guess you could argue that it perhaps doesn't particularly advance the plot, but what it does advance is something of the relationship between Angel Eyes and Blondie. In other words, they have established a more cynical and mutually using and also wary relationship as compared to Blondie's relationship with Tuco. In that picture, Angel Eyes, the Van Cleef character, is a very haunted character because he's searching for revenge for particularly evil depredation against the woman he loves, who's his sister, actually. And the unfortunate the scene that we're coming up to now, which involves from who's uh, which we will shortly see, and that he was, you know, and in the first take of the sequence, was uncomfortably too close, and so Leone had to dig a somewhat deeper trench for him to be in. I mean, he survived the first take, and by the hair of his chinny chin chin, and you know, then got himself into a more comfortable situation for the second take. But you know, as Clint kept saying in Elmira, Spain, American life, and found, as he said, and he was, and you know, certainly the characters played by Angel Eyes or his Wallace, his assistant, are examples of Leone's increasing kind of post-war cynicism, and 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 in other words, how it is that Eli Wallach happens to wander to the very same town that Clint and Lee Van Cleef are also wandering toward. You know, it's and uh, and so and never use one bullet where four will do. Talks instead of shooting, but it's a nicely staged little sequence. You know, and Clint on the first picture that when of it's a great little line there. We have the sense that that may well happen. I love the way the war just keeps kind of casually intruding upon these guys' adventures. I mean, you know, sitting around, and the next thing you know, you know, and I think that is a statement that you know that and you know, so this is a sequence that I think, particularly in the way it's set up, although it kind of works out as a conventional street shooting sequence. Certainly starts out, though, as something that has a little bit more to say about the casual way in which life can be snuffed out. I don't think that Leone in his previous two westerns had all the wherewithal that he had in this film to do the kind of coverage that he rather obviously did in sequences like this. But I think, and it's certainly true of his later, more epic films, the Once Upon a Time films, as it were, he he certainly by then had the wherewithal to do as much coverage as he wanted to do and to put the film together very much in the editing room. One of the things you do notice in this particular, you know, walk down against the bad guys, and you know, there is certainly a reference here, I think, to High Noon, in which, in that case, one lone lawman has to take on a gang of about this size. It certainly is a reference to that, but I think there's more humor in the way that Leone stages this scene. I think there is a kind of a postmodernist awareness that, as was previously the case in the classic westerns. Funny line here. Again, notice the way, you know, whenever there's a zinger like Idiots, It's For You, Morricone's score pops in there just to give a nice little ironic, humorous emphasis to the humor of where Eli is taking him is really to the moral center of this movie, and it's something I've obviously alluded to before, but you know, it is to a sort of meaningless and brutal conflict. There are new shots in this sequence that were cut from the original American release print. The sequence, in particular, I think, and it was a war in which the slaughter in the trenches has become, as we, but it was in which, so this is a direct reference by Sergio Leone to the waste of what he is really saying implicitly, and we'll shortly say explicitly, is that, is the man who can keep himself drunk and thus half oblivious to its waste. It's an interesting concept, that one, the drunken commander of a rather large unit in a rather large battle. I'm not particularly familiar with the drunken, or at least drunk on duty officer in war films. So it's kind of an interesting novel conceit on Leone's part. See, what this officer in his drunkenness understands is that, these guys are kind of picaresque heroes, that is to say, you know, heroes who are on an adventurous quest, the goal of which is less important than the quest itself. The the journey being of more interest than the goal, and I think it's a true enough Leone characterization of what's going on with these guys. Now, there's a good idea, and of course, that's what the freelance or picaresque character in a movie can always do. I mean, without allegiance to any larger group or larger ideology, he or they in this case can just look at the situation and say, well, why don't we just kind of think outside the box on this one? And that's, of course, what is going to happen. I mean, there the first explosions betoken the daily attack over this, insane situation. Uh, this is a film that this is a sequence in the film that took Sergio and his company away from where they were used to shooting in Spain, which was in Elmira in the flat. I think you will see in this sequence and in its management of very large forces, much larger forces than we had seen either in the Dollars films or earlier in this film, that Leone, who had served a long, long apprenticeship as an assistant director, often working for where American companies came because it was references to classic war films. Certainly some shots at Kubrick's Paths of Glory. These are kind of classic pieces of filmmaking by Leone. A big difference here, I think, is that Clint speaks what amounts to over a meaningless. Is it possible that Blondie has all along been a secret moralist? I don't know, but in the character Clint's playing, that he is perhaps a better man than he knows or wants to publicly acknowledge. There is the crazy logic of what's going to happen in the next few minutes in this movie. You will remove in this sequence, and I think it may be just there where we saw and that proved to be the case. Whether it was this sequence or a subsequent sequence, I'm not entirely certain. Could have been both of them. But again, it proved Clint's point that making movies Italian style could be dangerous. See, again, I mean, uh, so the point that's being made in this sequence is a point Charlie Chaplin, oddly enough, had made almost 20 years earlier in Monsieur Verdoux, where he was charged with his character Verdoux was, you know, and of weapons, and um, in that are compared to the and this is of course one of those lengthy processes by which vast objects are wired for their ultimate destruction. And the point here is, of course, to intercut it with the more intimate scenes of the colonel coming to his last. Um, what's good about the structure of this sequence is that while these guys are arranging to blow up the bridge, a point is being made that this is they know that the colonel is going to die, and it's in a funny way their little gift to him that they will take care of destroying the object that has destroyed him. So it's a kind of a nice irony they're working on here, and it comes to a nice conclusion when the bridge finally goes up, and it's virtually the last thing the colonel hears. Now, it is important to understand that this bridge had to be blown up twice. The verbal signal that Leone had arranged with, his explosives guy, he accidentally uttered before his cameras were entirely ready to record that destruction. And so it went unrecorded. And there was a delay of at least a week or 10 days while the whole bridge had to be rebuilt. I mean, Leone was, of course, furious, as only he could be furious in a slightly comical, Italianate way. But it was a miserable misunderstanding, and although the budget was fair sized on this movie, it certainly delayed shooting. A comic arrangement of Clint and Eli in that sequence. And now, after all those weeks and months, it's over. The armies have magically withdrawn. The way is clear for them to head for Sad Hill and the long-awaited conclusion to this movie. But not before there's a lovely little sequence that we're shortly going to encounter. I think, as a director, that Clint learned something about. He always liked that. He uses the word always spectacle with when he talks about Leone, and I think he did acquire some sense of that from Leone. Now here's one of Leone's bare ruin choirs. I mean, it's a church that's been bombed out of any useful existence. And he recognizes that this kid is not going to live for long. You know, he covers him with his own coat, which is an act that has certain biblical overtones to it. And, you know, just, so it is a symbolic act. And, you know, there's a quality in this thing that we have not seen in any of Clint's previous work for Leone. And just incidentally there, he prepares for what I think is one of the best gags in the movie. One of the best Clint gags ever. You know, the famous guy with the 44 Magnum, toter of big guns, here fires absolutely the biggest gun of his career to is terrific. And, you know, the second shot, for heaven's sakes, brings Tuco to Sad Hill. And it's a wonderful shot, you know, the notion of... And this is a sequence that, because he wanted to show, you know, the endless screen-filling you know, and but this is but for the conclusion of this movie, I think a lesser director would have done a lesser amount of running around in this sequence, but you really have to let the man set his own pace and do what he wants to do. I mean, it's amazing to me that as long as they were cutting this film for its initial release, you could have cut a lot of this sequence without a consequence to the narrative understanding of the film. We are now arrived at where he thinks he has to be, at the grave of Arch Stanton. Oh, and look, he's got the serape on. That's not accidental. This is the man with no name. Oops. See, nobody's quite paying attention. They're so busy digging up. So everybody has sneaked up on everybody. Oh, the crossing has been wonderful with Eli. I mean, a wonderful visual here. I mean, they're in a circle and they formed a kind of a triangle. And we are at the shootout. But I love the geometry of the sequence. Something really rather classical about it. And again, this is a sequence that becomes, you know, almost... it takes a very long time and a lot of looking before the action of the piece can possibly begin. The triangle reformed and reformed again. It's a beautifully covered sequence. The extra male or men have been dispensed with in an earlier sequence, and so that, you know, there can be a final confrontation between good and bad. But this is a movie that, from its very title, tells us that there are three types of guys in this: the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so they have to come to this triangular shootout. A lot of wide shots, a lot of close-ups, just like we said at the very beginning of the film. Basic Leone style. And there we have a close-up and a long shot all in one. It's just wonderful. The amount of time he takes in this, the increasing tightness of the close-ups on the gun and in particular the eyes. That's really masterful movie making. And then the rhythm there. Perfect. Would you say that what we have here is a kind of a motif? A circle, you know. We are describing a huge circle in the course of this movie. We have just seen the shootout in the circle. The noose is a sort of a circle, but the fact is that, you know, one time or another, everybody has their heads in a noose and they're standing on a perilous platform. In this case, a pretty wobbly one, but probably no more unstable than being on a horse. And here we are back at virtually the beginning of the movie, and this great vast circle is about to be closed finally. Again, you've got to mention religious imagery. I mean, it's a very shaky cross that he's standing on, but it is a cross. And it says probably something about Leone's spirituality, shall we say? You know, and the who magical. I mean, that shot is nothing but magical. I think it's fair to say that despite the you know you know and really only a matter of months before Sergio died prematurely of a heart condition, and so and that's a great Leone shot of, you know, and